The iPhone 14 Pro Max is now in hand, and after a few days now with both the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max in hand, there are things about the 14 Pro Max that are absolutely exactly what I was expecting and have been saying in my previous videos. But there are a couple of things that surprised me already when comparing with the 13 Pro Max. The question is, are those things going to be enough to warrant you an upgrade? I'm Alex and I do down-to-earth tech videos. The first thing I will say is, I have been using the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max, and you've probably seen quite a lot of people getting overexcited about this phone, making it sound like it's the best thing since sliced bread, right? Maybe I'm missing something, I don't know. Look, I'm just personally really not that excited about the 14 Pro Max. I appreciate that this is an amazing piece of technology, especially when you look at it in isolation. This is a marvel of tech, right? But I explained this in my previous videos. For me, it is a minor upgrade. Now, this comparison between the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max is not going to be what you expect, right? You know, it has some objective elements in it that will hopefully help you out. But there is an underlying feel to me, which you could argue is subjective, which is the feeling that this is really an iPhone 13s Pro Max rather than a 14 Pro Max, if you know what I mean, right? Or maybe a 12 SS, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, from the 12 Pro Max to the 13 Pro Max, it did feel more like we were getting an upgrade, albeit small. But from the 13 Pro Max to this 14 Pro Max, I really haven't got that sense of it being an upgrade yet. And when I look at Android options, I'm starting to wonder, is Apple giving up on this form factor? Or are we meant to accept that we reached peak smartphone and just go about our lives? Is this new display now with the dynamic island and the new cameras enough to warrant an $1,100 starting price? Let's take a look at some of the more objective factors to consider. Let's start with call quality and 4G or 5G, right? I'm getting 3 bars now of 4G, which is interesting.
Hello?
Hello mate, how are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Looks like it's bedtime.
The girls have dinner.
Yeah, so I'm calling you on the 14 right now, but I'm gonna call you from the 13 as well.
It gives more like a clear sound of your voice. It tries to block the noise around you.
Okay, that's interesting, because I've got the car going and there's a little bit of wind, not a lot of wind. Remove the case as well to see if it makes any difference on the audio.
No, it's the same.
Okay, cool. All right, so far so good. This is a very poor area of reception normally, and I'm actually getting, well, 3 bars now and 4G, which is unusual for this spot here. I bet I put on the 13 and 13 will be the same now, right? If you're in America, you don't need to do this anymore, right? Hello mate, does it sound alright or same thing? Can you tell the difference?
Yeah, I can tell the difference.
Can you?
I still can. It's still clear.
Yeah.
But not like the iPhone 14. So
I have to say, you sound a little bit more digitized as well. But yeah, it's still very clear. I'm actually quite impressed with the 13 Pro Max. I was hoping that would be some difference in there, but I can't fake this, right? This is, you heard it. It's pretty much the same thing. All right, let's go back to the studio. It's one of those things that drives me nuts when I'm watching tech reviews. Like, it's a phone. Does it make phone calls? You know, how good is it? I wanted to talk about the ability to make phone calls and have decent data connection, especially in less populated areas. I do want to test, you know, busy places as well, like London, maybe sports events and things like that. This is where these things really struggle. I want to do that as well in a later review. But there are places here where I live that I know I rarely get a good signal, so I thought it would be good to test that. I live in the countryside here in England, and I'll probably get 5G by, I don't know, 2030. But as you've seen here, 4G is what I get, and getting 4 bars on the 13 Pro Max and 3 bars on the 14 Pro Max, I was really expecting this to be the other way around. Anyway, I'll just have to do more tests on this. It is worth noting that if you're in the US, the hardware on the iPhone is completely different over there when it comes to the antenna. You basically get a different antenna component to us plebs here in Europe. eSIM is available here in the UK. I just haven't changed my plan to eSIM yet. Not sure I want that, to be honest, but it would have made that test a little bit easier, I guess. I also just want to say a big thank you to all of you who left me a message in the last video. There was so many supportive messages. I wasn't expecting that at all, but it was my genuine reaction and I'm really glad that you liked it. Now, when it comes to display, I know there's a lot of hysteria going on. There's a lot of noise about the dynamic island. Is the dynamic island a deal breaker if you're not sure between the 13 and 14? Absolutely not. It should never be, in my opinion. But I'd be very interested to hear if there's a real benefit of the dynamic island that makes it worth it, you know, to choose between the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. Let me know in the comment section with the island emoji if you would upgrade just because of that. And let's just use the whole emoji again. I like that one. If you think the island is just a gimmick. The real difference for me on the display is the brightness. And yes, the display is brighter on the 14 Pro Max now, but here's an example outside between the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. And honestly, I had to look really hard to distinguish between the two here. In fact, let's have a little game here. Try and tell which is which before I put the labels on it. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, I'll put the labels on now so you can see if you got it right. And you can tell this even if you're using the phone indoors sometimes, so the 2000 nits brightness is not even coming into play there. It's definitely brighter. On the other hand, I think we reached a level of resolution on the displays that anything beyond it is no longer that noticeable to our human eyes. It's the concept of diminishing return, right? And the distance between you and the screen. The technology has reached a level of maturity and it's kind of, reached a plateau. Which when I think about it, actually makes sense now on why I thought the 13 Pro Max felt like an upgrade. It's one of the things that definitely was a bigger jump, because the big difference we saw on the 13 Pro Max was that better refresh rate, right? In other words, when it comes to the display comparison, unless you're coming from an older iPhone like the 12 or 11 or even older, you're really not going to notice much of a difference, apart from it being brighter when using outside. Now, when it comes to the battery on these two, I don't think there's been enough time for anyone to really be able to say definitively which of these will perform better, and ultimately, this will largely depend on how you use your device, right? The kind of generic feel that I've got in this first week is that these are both incredible and will last all day and well into the next day. The 13 right now feels like you can go full like 2 days on a single charge. The 14, time will tell, but it's early days. Now, if you whack the brightness on the 14 Pro Max to 100% and really use the device on those conditions for long periods of time, then of course, it's not going to make it through the day, let alone 2 days. Plus, with the always-on display on the 14 Pro Max, it will consume more battery as expected. The A16 Bionic chip might come into play and make it more optimized, but again, too early to tell. There's lots of things you can do to minimize that as well, like adjusting the always-on display with focus mode, or placing the iPhone facing down when you don't need to look at it. But yeah, it's still an awesome battery, just like it was in the 13 Pro Max. Now you might say, what about the cameras? There are big differences, right? Well, I'm not going to go into the specs because I don't want to send you to sleep here, but they're on the screen if you want to have like a side-by-side comparison. For me, in the last few days of using both and comparing them, taking photos with both, taking videos with both, they're pretty much identical from a quality perspective. Both can shoot ProRAW and both can do 4K videos and ProRes videos if you're crazy enough. But the main difference I noticed was actually using the new modes, and more specifically, action mode in the 14 Pro Max. This takes stabilization to a complete new level that I haven't seen in any other device before. And I've got to say, it's another credit to Apple here. I've been moaning quite a bit for the last 2 years about the camera being boring on this phone. Because when I look at Android devices that may not even have the same sort of color science or quality of videos, they're just fun to use. So hats off to Apple here, because I thought action mode really makes it fun to use. We need more of that. It will be interesting to see how this compares with the S22 Ultra and the Galaxy Z Fold here and other Android devices that I've got here, something like super steady mode, for example. I'll make sure to include that in my next reviews. Action mode was one of those rare moments when I started to use something thinking, here we go, it's going to be another gimmick, isn't it? But it ended up really surprising me. So again, hats off to Apple here. Cinematic mode didn't land for me on the 13 Pro Max, and based on my quick tests so far, it feels a bit more responsive, sure, but the AI still makes some mistakes in detecting the background, detecting edges, and unless it's a really obvious, like a person, and the background is clear, it still struggles and wouldn't be a deciding factor when picking between these two. The whole rack focusing does feel faster on the 14 Pro Max, it's just not clever enough yet. What would be a deciding factor, in my opinion, is the new 4K 24 frames per second video mode. I appreciate that this is a subtle difference, and we already had this mode on the 13 Pro Max, but as you can see behind me, the background has this really nice kind of blurriness to it, and the nice bokeh, as they say. But this subtle difference made video look more natural and less sharpened or digitally processed, if you know what I mean. I would even go as far as saying that this is the real cinematic mode. I really like this. The one thing I've noticed though is that there's a choppiness when you're actually looking at the screen and recording in this mode. I haven't seen this in the 4K 30 or 4K 60, but when you're filming in 4K 24, you get this jitter on the screen that it's not nice to look at. It's not very Apple. And I wonder if they'll fix this by software updates, but it's definitely there, can't deny it. You can see here just a quick test on what that mode looks like on the 13 Pro Max and what that sounds like as well, in comparison here with the 14 Pro Max and what that looks like and sounds like. So if you're someone who noticed that difference and you care about that quality of videos, this is definitely a worthy upgrade. Before we go into the next part of the video, just a quick reminder, YouTube can be quite tricky for a small channel like this one. So if you're enjoying this video, a thumbs up will go a long way. It really helps YouTube recommend this channel to other people, and if you like my stuff, a sub to the channel will be amazing. I really appreciate that. And the benefit to you is that I'll be here at least once a week with another down-to-earth tech video for you. I will be comparing the 14 Pro Max with the S22 Ultra next, and I'll also be doing a Z Fold 4 comparison with the iPhone 14 Pro Max because why not? And there's more. I've also ordered the iPhone 14 Plus and the Apple Watch Ultra, which I'm really excited about. It's coming in the next couple of weeks. So if you like tech gadgets, you're in good company here. Coming back to these two, the other aspect that I thought was noticeable is the speaker quality. But I'm gonna shut up for a bit now and do my best here to reproduce the sound via YouTube for you. So if you're gaming and listening to content without headphones, I know this is an important feature and both options would be great for you. But if you really care about it, then 14 kind of edges it by a little bit. There are many other features that I haven't really compared yet, such as water resistance, but given they both have the same IP rating, I would imagine that the 14 Pro Max will do just as well in situations like you've seen here in a swimming pool, where I was using the 13 Pro Max underwater. It is worth noting though that after about 10 minutes of playing in the water, I could not use the lightning port on the 13 Pro Max because it detected moisture in there. But I personally think that it is amazing that you can do that and not destroy your phone in the first place. Right, look, I know this is probably not what you wanted to hear, or maybe it is, I don't know, let me know. But this is just my genuine reaction right now. I want to love this iPhone and I want it to be amazing. But I just can't fake being overexcited about the iPhone 14 based on what I've seen so far. So I could not hand in heart recommend the 14 Pro Max to anyone who is considering the 13 Pro Max as well. Unless you really care about those one or two features that I showed here, where I think the 14 Pro Max has the edge, then the 13 Pro Max for me would be the best recommendation. You can save a few $100s now and get the iPhone 15 next year. You might just want the 14 Pro Max because you like having the latest and that makes you happy. And in this case, right, why the heck not? If you're not entering in debt and if it's something that you can easily afford, you do you. YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video over here, and I put this playlist over here that I think you're gonna like. Don't forget to click on my face somewhere here on the screen. Bye.
I tried peeking through the cracks, saw the light but couldn't catch it.